What's up, everybody? We are back with another $2 deck tech for 2DH format we created to have a new meta for Commander and to make the game more accessible to new players and players on a budget. I built this deck for our 1 versus 1 format, the main difference being you only have one opponent and you're both starting at 30 life. Mono green seemed like a lot of fun now that they're doing things like giving you haste and removal. You've got this critical mass of fight spells now, and Surrak the Hunt Caller just makes everything a turn faster than it should be. So instead of normal green decks where you tap out, hope for the best, and then on your turn see if everything's going to go to plan, with this deck, it's fast, it's fun, it's big and stompy, and it should be a pretty quick deck tech, so fasten your seatbelts here. We've got the Mosswart Bridge. It's going to let me cheat my big stuff into play. Oran Reef Vastwood, it's going to let me put a 1/1 counter on green creatures that entered the battlefield. With very few tap lands, I can afford to play cards like this because there's virtually no fixing. Llanowar Reborn is going to give me a free Graft trigger just to get a little more power and toughness. Thicket helps me from getting flooded, and Passage lets me push through for damage. You're going to have a basic ramp package here with Search for Tomorrow, Nature's Lore, Wood Elves. Gaia's Touch is a new one since we're mono green. You can play an extra forest, sack it and do something else, or the next turn have a whole bunch of mana to get your big creatures out of the way. I run Explore for just a little bit of digging and some ramp. Then you just got Sakura Tribe Elder, Rampant Growth, and Harrow to get your deck going quickly. This deck does take advantage of all the mana dorks that it can, so we've got Arbor Elf, Mystic, Llanowar, and Fiendhorn, all to get those turn 3 Surraks going. I only run a couple of artifacts in here. This one gives me Trample, which is what the deck needs more than anything. Commune with Nature is a great card draw spell for this deck, as we're very heavy on creatures. Scute Mob, better in the late game, but if you drop them early, it's fine as well. Gives you 1 extra pip of power. Again, we're trying to get to 8 with Surrak. Once you have 8, you are bashing with haste. Experiment 1, nice little value creature, grows a little bit as the game goes on, and it's good against Wrath. We run all the good 2-drops that we can. Garruk's Companion has Trample, Tuskers, 3/3, and we even run the Centaur for the 3 power. Again, with the 3 power, once you hit Surrak, you've got 8 and you're off to the races. Strangleroot Geist, great versus Wrath. Haste is nice. This is as close to mono red as you're going to get from a mono green deck. Avatar of the Resolute gives me a little more power with the 1/1 counters that you'll see on some of the creatures here. Skin Shifter, really cool to have just a 3-mana 4/4. Also, if you just can't get through, you can push some points of damage by turning it into a bird. Ambush Viper is a really great card. There's not a ton of interaction with my opponent. This is one thing that I can do. It's also worth noting that your opponent might think that you have nothing on their end step. You can flash this in, and then when you untap and cast Surrak, it's going to give you that extra power to trigger Formidable. Bramblewood Paragon, it's a 2/2 himself, but it makes Surrak a 6/5 with the 1/1 counter since Surrak's a warrior, so it just helps push through. Hero's Blade is insane. You land this, you cast Surrak, it auto-equips, Surrak gives himself haste, you're bashing. Spawn Wraith is just a win con in itself. If you turn 2 this and you can get through, your opponent is just in big trouble unless they hit a Wrath effect. But it also helps you versus Wrath effects because you don't need to overcommit to the board. You just let this card win you the game, and if it doesn't, you start jamming all your other creatures. Champion really helps you push through damage by stopping the little chump blocks. It's also really good with the 1/1 synergies, as is Renegade Krasis. I wouldn't normally run this card, but there's just enough going on to make this good. Boon Satyr, and just like Ambush Viper, it's best flashed in on your opponent's end step. They think you've got nothing, and then all of a sudden you have 9 power in play before they blink. Witch Stalker, nice against the blue decks, and it's also just, there's not that many 3-drops, so I have to run just kind of whatever I can in that slot to keep the curve flowing. Reverent Hunter can easily be like a 6/6 or a 7/7 when it comes into play. Give it haste, bash with it. Reclamation Sage for a little utility. Fallow Earth to slow down your opponent or get rid of those pesky lands that can stop you. And then we're just going right up the curve here to Big Daddy Pelucranos. 4 mana 5/5 with an ability. I'm sold. Wolfbriar Elemental. All of a sudden you got 7 mana. You're committing 10 power to the board just like that. Chameleon Colossus wins games on its own. If this gets through and you pump it, your opponent's 30 life is quickly dwindling. Iwamori of the Open Fist, really no drawback here. No one's going to have a legendary creature in their hand, and you're getting a 5/5 Trampler for 4, which is just what this deck wants. Acid Moss, They're down a land, you're up a land, enough said. Vorapede, this is one of the only decks that I've actually not cut Vorapede from. All my 5-drops need to have trample so that I'm pressuring my opponent when I cast them with the haste. And this guy is just insane. Wins you the Wraith, good against Wrath. Weatherseed Treefolk, this is just one of those, you keep killing my creatures, I keep casting them kind of cards. Gives you a little bit more inevitability with the trample. Creeper Hulk turns all your 1/1s into 5/5s, can easily finish the game. 7 mana, jam this, make an elf bigger. Your opponent's in trouble right there with Surrak giving haste. Stampeding Elk Herd, what is this card doing here? Oh my god, it gives everything trample. Why not? Let's jam it. It's a 5/5 with trample for 5. That's what Surrak needs to finish the game. Silverheart makes something huge, makes itself huge. Again, imagine all these things with haste. We're not tapping out and waiting a turn. Surrak is getting you there. Phyrexian Hydra, fastest clock in 2DH, enough said. Acidic Slime, deal with anything. Might as well run it. Hit a land if you want to be a jerk. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do. Conclave Naturalist, what great value on a 4/4 for 5. Get rid of a pacifism. Get rid of your opponent's Worn Power Stone or whatever they tapped out for. Rushwood Elemental, card's not great, but it is a 5-mana 4/4 with trample that does get bigger, gives you the inevitability. I figured it was worth jamming. Also good with the devotion elements. Plow Under, just a brutal thing to ramp into. Just casting this on turn 3 or 4 is enough to make somebody scoop and just be way behind in the game. We also have Stunted Growth. Stops your opponents from drawing into their removal spells or their land drops or whatever it is that they needed at that point in the game. And all of these things can be cast as early as turn 3 and really put a hurting on your opponent, especially if they're a tempo-based deck. They're going to have a hard time coming back. Thunderfoot Baloth is just really the only 6-drop in the deck. It's a huge finisher. It's an overrun effect on a creature. Gives trample. It's everything I need at the top of the curve. And finally, a little bit of blue hate because you know it's coming. And this is just a really great way to finish the game after a Wrath where your opponent thinks they're safe and they're out of cards. So that's the curve. Now we've got the interaction. We've got a critical mass of fight cards, as I mentioned. Prey Upon, Epic Confrontation. They just keep printing these. Savage Punch. Uvenwald Tracker, you can repeatedly fight your opponent's blockers or generals or whatever it is. There's some old school cards in here that have like the forced block effect. So you target their creature and it's essentially a removal spell in green. You want to swing anyway, you want to pump your guys anyways. It's just icing on the cake. These cards are really great when you curve out into them. Enlarge, +7/+7, has to be blocked, gives trample, everything you want in this deck. Revenge of the Hunted, when you hit this off its miracle, you follow it up with another card. It's just devastating speed. And you know what? For 6 mana, sometimes it's fine just to cast it. All creatures have to block it. It can be a board wipe. Cetizen Tactics, probably the worst of the fight cards, but the fact that you can do it at instant speed when you're on the back foot and just like get rid of whatever your opponent was going to be racing you with, really powerful effect. And you just want a critical mass of these so that you can interact with your opponent. Ranger's Guile for a little bit of hexproof. And Vines of Vastwood pushes through the damage. You can also target your opponent's creatures to stop their strategy, whatever they're doing. But really, this is all about bashing and protecting your big guys. Sylvan Might, +2/+2, and you can flash it back. I don't run a lot of combat tricks. The fact that you can use this one twice makes it worth it for the tempo plays in the early game when someone's blocking your 3/3s and your 2/2s and stuff like that. You keep your creatures on the board, you get their chump blockers out of the way, and it also gives trample. So just as many ways to give trample as I possibly can. It's the only thing Surrak is missing to just be devastating. So Hunter's Prowess, I run this for the card draw effect as well as the trample. I don't run Hunter's Insight. It's 3 mana. It doesn't give trample. I like this card a lot better at the top of the curve. And then you got Triumph of the Hordes to finish the game early, and Overwhelming Stampede to make all of your guys huge and bash for victory. So that is a 10-minute deck tech there for Surrak, the Hunt Caller. It's a ton of fun to play. You can do this kind of stuff in 2DH 1v1. You don't always have to have all broken cards to be successful. You can go for just sheer power and redundancy, consistency in this format sometimes. So if you like the sound of that, check us out on Facebook in the link below. I've got the full deck list for Surrak listed as well. We play at Card Kingdom every Thursday night. Thanks for watching, guys.